My name is Grace Brighton. I am 33 years old, and I am a registered nurse in California. My life was marked by a familiar rhythm, long shifts in the hospital, community services, and an almost obsessive dedication to my faith. Every month, without hesitation, I diligently paid my tithe. It wasn't a random gesture, but a habit instilled since childhood. As I grew up, I learned that giving 10% of one's income was a tangible proof of faith and a sure step toward divine favor. God blesses those who give, the pastors would repeat, and I dared not doubt them, even when balancing the books meant sacrificing something important. My loyalty did not waver. I paid on time, convinced that my gesture would ensure prosperity, protection, and ultimately a safe place in heaven. I was proud of this obedience to the point that when I prayed, I would tell myself, God must be pleased with me. I have given him what is his. But if someone had delved deeper into my soul, they would have found something different. My faith was not fueled by love or gratitude, but by a sense of obligation and fear. My relationship with God had turned into a transaction. I do my part and he will do his, I thought. I believed I was on the right path. I regularly attended church, helped those in need, and most importantly, followed every rule. I consider myself a good Christian, someone who had nothing to fear. Then came the day that changed everything. What I believed to be a certainty crumbled before my eyes. It was a quiet April afternoon, one of those days that start without any foreboding of what was to come. I had just finished an exhausting shift at the hospital. That day, a series of emergencies had left me physically drained and mentally empty. I headed home with the sole desire to collapse onto the couch and clear my mind, at least for a few hours. As soon as I arrived, an unusual sense of fatigue struck me. It wasn't just the usual tiredness. This time it was different, a growing pressure in my chest, my breath becoming increasingly short. I thought it was asthma, perhaps one of those sporadic attacks that hit me when I was too stressed. I sat down, trying to calm myself, took a deep breath, counted to 5, but I still couldn't catch my breath. I tried to relax, to ignore the growing sensation, but it soon became clear that something was wrong. I jumped up, searching for my phone to call for help, but my legs gave way. The world began to spin, the images around me blurred, and the floor seemed to come closer too quickly as I fell. A thought crossed my mind. Am I about to die? Then everything went dark. But it wasn't a cold or threatening darkness. It was as if a warm blanket was wrapping around me, bringing me a peace I had never known. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in my body. I found myself in a place I can't describe with words. It wasn't the world I knew, yet I didn't feel lost. I was enveloped by an intense, vibrant light that seemed to emanate pure love. It wasn't just a place, it was a presence, an entity that permeated everything. I felt safe, as if I had returned home after a long journey. And then I saw him, Jesus. He was there in front of me, radiant and powerful, yet at the same time, gentle and welcoming. His eyes, I had never seen anything like them. They held an indescribable love as deep as eternity, but also a sadness that pierced my soul. There was no need for introductions. I knew who he was, and I knew that he knew everything about me. My knees gave way, and I fell to the ground, unable to speak. A knot tightened in my throat, not out of fear, but from the awareness of standing before perfection. Tears began streaming down my face, an unstoppable flow of emotions I couldn't control. Jesus approached and gently lifted me up. His hand was not just physical. It was a touch that crossed every barrier, reaching my heart, my soul, every part of me. Do not fear, Grace, he said, his voice like a melody echoing through my entire being. I have brought you here for a reason. Time is short, but my mercy is still available to those who seek it. The vision changed once again. Now, I was in a different place, surrounded by people of all ages from every part of the world, but something was wrong. Their faces were pale, their expressions empty, and they seemed overwhelmed by an invisible weight and oppressive energy hung in the air like a fog that suffocated every hope. What is happening here, Lord? I asked, looking around with concern. Jesus pointed to the crowd. These are those who have forgotten the value of fasting, he said with a tone of deep sadness. They have lost one of the most important keys to drawing closer to God. Look closely, Grace, because this is what happens when the heart drifts away. His words struck me. I thought I knew fasting, understood its purpose, but at that moment, I realized my understanding was superficial. Looking at those people, I felt a deep hunger, but it wasn't a hunger for food. It was a hunger of the soul, a lack of connection with God. Fasting, Jesus continued, is not just a sacrifice but an act of love. It is a way to set aside the world and listen to the Father's voice, but many consider it an obsolete practice, something useless. As he spoke, the scene changed again. He showed me people who were genuinely fasting with hearts full of faith and humility. They shone with a golden light, and their faces were serene, filled with peace and strength. They knelt in prayer, offering their fasts as a gift, not as an obligation. Then I saw others who were fasting out of habit or for selfish reasons. Their light was dim, almost absent. Their prayers seemed to bounce off an invisible wall, unable to reach God. Grace, Jesus said, I want my people to understand that fasting is more than just an act. It is a way to purify the heart, to set aside the self, and find me. When they fast with faith, my children experience miracles. Their spirit is strengthened, and I can work through them. I felt a weight in my heart. I had often viewed fasting as a duty, something to do to be a good Christian, but now I understood it was much more. It was a door that led directly to the heart of God. Tell them this, Grace, Jesus said, looking at me intensely. Teach them the power of fasting so that they can draw closer to me in a deeper way. The golden light faded, and I found myself in a devastated landscape. The ground was arid, cracked by the relentless sun. The crops were withered, and the air was heavy, laden with despair. In the distance, I saw lines of desperate people. Mothers held their starving children. Men with sunken eyes and trembling hands begged for help. The famine, I whispered, a lump in my throat. Yes, Jesus replied, but this is not just a famine of food. It is a famine of the Spirit. My people have abandoned the true source of life and now pay the price. As I watched, despair turned to chaos in an improvised market. I saw people fighting for a piece of bread, hands reaching out, snatching food from others. I heard screams, cries, the noise of overturned carts. A woman clung to a sack of grain while a man forcefully tore it from her. Then I saw a little girl. She was so thin and fragile that she seemed like she could break with a gust of wind. She held out an empty bowl, her eyes full of tears, offering it to a man hoping for a gesture of compassion. He looked down, unable to help her, and walked away. The girl fell to her knees, sobbing. Lord, I wept, unable to bear the scene. Why? Why must they suffer so much? Jesus looked at me, the pain evident in his eyes. Grace, this is the result of a world that has turned away from me. Sin has corrupted everything, even the earth itself. But even in this suffering, there is hope. Many will come to me in their desperation. They will discover that I am the bread of life, the only one who can truly satisfy. As he spoke, I saw a different scene. In a modest home, a group of believers gathered around a table. The food was scarce, but their hands joined in prayer. They asked for God's blessing with genuine faith. When they broke the bread, something miraculous happened. The food multiplied. Everyone was satisfied, and their faces shone with peace and joy. These, Jesus said with a gentle smile, trust in me and see my providence. But those who cling to fear and hoard for themselves will lose what truly matters. I felt a strength growing within me. What can I do, Lord? I asked, how can I help them? Tell what you have seen, he replied. Teach them to trust in me, even in the darkest times. I am their refuge, their strength. The scene of the ruined earth dissolved, and I found myself above the earth, looking down. The planet seemed calm, but an unsettling energy hung in the air. Then everything changed. The ground began to tremble, and the calm turned into chaos. Cities were collapsing, bridges breaking, and people running everywhere, desperately seeking shelter. Icons of stability and human power were destroyed in moments. The noise was deafening. The roar of collapses, screams, the lament of the earth itself. "Lord, what's happening?" I shouted, terrified. "The earth groans grace," he said. "It has been corrupted by sin and now cries out for redemption. But this is not my judgment. It is a call. I call my children to return to me." Among the rubble, I saw groups of people kneeling in prayer. They were enveloped by a protective light, untouched amidst the destruction. They sang hymns, hands raised to the sky, and their faith was like a shining tower in the dark. "These are my children," Jesus said with a gentle smile. "They have built their lives on the rock of my word. But look at the others." He pointed to other people whose attitude was different. They were shouting, shaking their fists at the sky, and their faces were twisted with anger. "These cling to their pride," Jesus said sadly. "They refuse to see me, even now." I watched those scenes with a broken heart. The difference between the two groups was heartbreaking. On one side, faith shone like a light in the dark. On the other, pride and fear consumed the people. Jesus turned to me, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Grace," he said, "you must warn my people. Tell them to build their lives on me, for when everything else collapses, I will be the only refuge." As the vision of the ruined earth dissolved, I was transported to a world that seemed familiar but unsettlingly altered. It was like watching a distorted version of reality. People walked the streets, smiling serenely as if nothing was wrong. But beneath the surface, something was deeply wrong. "This is the time of deception," Jesus said with a grave look. "Many will be seduced by false promises, and the enemy will work to turn them away from me." I began to notice the details. Everywhere, screens projected images and messages from charismatic leaders. These men and women spoke with eloquence and charm, promising unity, prosperity, and peace. Crowds followed them devotedly, believing they were the answer to every problem. Some even knelt before them, as if they were deities. I watched a scene where one of these leaders performed a miracle, a spectacular healing that made the crowd scream in delirium. It seemed authentic, but I sensed a subtle, almost invisible darkness surrounding those acts. "Do not be deceived by appearances," Jesus said. "These do not come from me. They are wolves in sheep's clothing, and their works, though extraordinary, are deceitful. The enemy uses them to turn people's hearts away from the truth." Then I saw churches being torn apart. Once united congregations were riven by debates. Some followed these false leaders, convinced they were sent by God. Others remained faithful, but the tension among them grew. "How will they discern the truth, Lord?" I asked, feeling the weight of what I was witnessing. "Those who know my voice will not be deceived," Jesus replied. "But many no longer listen. They do not study my word, do not pray. They're easy prey for the enemy." He pointed to some families. One was gathered around the table, praying and reading the Bible together. An intense light enveloped them, and I saw that their faith made them unshakable. Then I saw other families distracted by screens, enchanted by false messages. Their light dimmed until it disappeared entirely. "Grace," Jesus said urgently, "you must warn them. Tell them to remain steadfast in my word, to pray without ceasing, and to discern spirits. The enemy will disguise himself as light, but his fruit will reveal him." The scene transformed once more, and this time I was forced to watch my own life. Every moment, every decision, every thought was projected before me like a film. It was as if Jesus was showing me every hidden corner of my soul. I saw myself diligently paying my tithe month after month with pride. I felt virtuous, sure that this gesture ensured my blessing. But as I watched, something deep pierced my heart. I did not give out of love. I gave out of fear. I was more concerned with following a rule than honoring God. Jesus approached and looked at me with love. "Grace," he said, "you have misunderstood. The tithe is not about money. It is not about a percentage. It is about the heart." I felt his words penetrate me. I believed that giving was enough. I said, tears in my eyes. "I thought it was sufficient to be right in your eyes." "I do not want your money," Jesus replied firmly, but without anger. I want you. I want your heart, your trust. Giving is an act of love and surrender, not a duty. When you give out of obligation, your gift loses its meaning. Then he showed me other people. Some gave with sincere hearts, and a radiant light surrounded them. Others, like me, gave out of habit, and their light was dim, almost non-existent. Grace, Jesus said, the true tithe is not a transaction. It is a reflection of your trust in me. I want my people to understand this. After showing me my life, Jesus took me to a new vision. In a small house, a poor family gathered around a table. They had little food, but they shared it with their neighbor. Their hands were raised in prayer, and their hearts were full of gratitude. Their faith was contagious, and I saw how they inspired hope in others. Then I saw a wealthy man. He donated enormous sums, but his heart was closed. His offerings were not acts of love, but of pride. He hoped to earn God's favor, not understanding that his money could not buy redemption. Jesus looked at me and said, "The true tithe is a gift of love, not an empty gesture. Those who give with a pure heart are rich for eternity." Grace, tell them this truth. Tell them that I want their hearts, not their possessions. The vision faded, and I found myself again in the radiant light. Jesus was in front of me, his eyes full of love and urgency. "Grace," he said, "now you know the truth. You must return and tell the world. Teach them that true worship is not made of rituals, but of lives surrendered to me. Time is short, but my mercy is great." I woke up in the hospital, my body aching but alive. The doctors looked at me in amazement, calling me a miracle. I knew that the greatest miracle was what had happened in my soul. Jesus showed me that we are not saved by rituals, habits, or religious appearances. We cannot buy God's favor with money, time, or good works. True salvation is found only in an authentic relationship with Him, in giving Him our hearts, and completely trusting His love and guidance. The message entrusted to me is clear. Time is short, the earth groans under the weight of sin, and what we see around us, the divisions, the sufferings, the injustices, are the result of a world that has chosen to turn away from God. But not all is lost. Jesus' mercy is still available to anyone who seeks it. The fundamental truth shown to me is this: Jesus is the only way to salvation. There are no shortcuts, no alternatives, no ritual sacrifice or human effort can replace the grace He offers. He does not want our money, our pride, or our religious appearances. He wants us. He wants our hearts, our thoughts, our complete trust. Fasting, prayer, generosity, all of this has value only if it comes from an authentic love for God. It is not what we do that saves us, but how we live in complete surrender and trust in Him. Jesus showed me that in the days to come, there will be great deception. False lights will try to distract us, confuse us, make us doubt the truth. That is why we must anchor ourselves to His Word, which is immutable and true. The Bible is not just a book. It is the very breath of God, a guide that illuminates our path in a world full of darkness. I understood that no matter how difficult it seems, our task is to be lights in this world. We must pray, fast, love, and share the truth without fear. Jesus told me, "Tell what you have seen, for many are confused. Some will seek my presence in the chaos, and you must help them find me." Eternal life is a gift we cannot earn, but we can receive it with faith. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, or how far you feel from God. He is calling you. He wants to save you, restore you, love you. If there's a verse that has been etched in my heart after this experience, it is this: "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." John 14, verse 6. This phrase is the heart of the message. Jesus is the only door to salvation. There is no other name in which we can be saved, no other hope outside of Him. Please do not ignore this call. Time is short, but His grace is infinite. Return to Him. Seek Him with all your heart, and you will find not only answers, but a peace that the world cannot give. Jesus does not just want to save the world. He wants to save you personally. He is waiting with open arms. If you're reading these words, know that it is not a coincidence. This is your opportunity to respond to the call. Do not wait. Turn to Him today, for Jesus is here, ready to transform your life for eternity. If you made it this far, I want to sincerely thank you for your time and for listening to this story. Let me know what you think in the comments. You can write Amen or the name of your country, so I'll know where you're listening from. I also invite you to share this message with 3 friends. Don't underestimate the power of sharing. It could change the life of someone who truly needs it. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel to receive inspiring content every day, and I want to let you know that memberships are now open. If you decide to join, not only will you support this channel, but you'll also receive a special blessing for being part of this mission. Thank you for being here and for being part of this community. God bless you.